everyone, I'm so excited about today's project. Courtney from our sewing team is a Lone Star expert, and I have wanted to make a Lone Star for so long, and she helped me design and make this one, and I just love how it turned out. So let me show you how to make it. I'm calling this pattern Prairie Twilight. I think it just turned out so beautiful and it looks really radiant as it bursts out from the middle. And so in order to make this, you are going to need 5 different prints. Up first of your white, you'll need 7/8 of a yard. Of the brown, you need 3/4 of a yard. Of this light blue, it's 5/8 of a yard. A 1/2 yard of the teal, and whatever you choose for your background. I use this really pale kind of aqua color. You need 2 yards of that. For your backing, you need 4 yards with horizontal seams. You're also going to need a marking tool and a nice ruler with a 45-degree line. So let's go ahead and move all of this out of the way. And I do recommend, if you have never made a Lone Star quilt before, Courtney has a video on our YouTube channel called Lone Star Celebration, and she walks you through all kinds of tips as far as starching, pinning, just really great tips and tricks if you've never made one of these before. So go ahead and watch that so you have all of her insights, and then we will get started. So up first, what you're gonna do is we are basing our design off of 3-inch strips. And there are 5 different strip sets that you need to make. We're gonna work on the first one here. I went ahead and cut our different colors into 3-inch strips, and then I cut them in half, so it's not the full width of fabric. That was one of Courtney's tips to manage this. And so you can see here, now we are gonna make these strip sets. So here's my first color, and then when I go to add the second color, I'm actually gonna offset it those 3 inches. So I'm gonna have less waste by doing that since I'm cutting all of these at an angle. So let's go ahead and fold this first one over, and I just lay it on my mat and kind of eyeball to make sure that I'm staggered the right amount. And then we'll just fold it over and we'll sew this with a 1/4 inch seam. And I'm gonna add one color after the other in that exact same way until my strip set is complete. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. There is that first one. Now I'm just going to roll this back, give it a quick press. There we go. And now we can bring in that brown color. Again, we just want to make sure that we're about 3 inches over. And then we'll fold that back and sew it down. And I'm gonna keep going until I have all 5 of my strips sewn together, and then I'll meet you back here when it's all done. All right, so let's give this last strip a final press. And then this strip set is done. There we go. And then strip set A is all ready to go. Let me show you what these other strip sets look like as well. I've already cut some off of them, but just so you can see, here is B. Here is C, D, and E. And so the color placement is really what matters. And let me show you now how we're going to cut these into our segments to make our Lone Star. So I can set this one aside, and we are going to use our ruler here and the 45-degree line. So I'm actually going to flip this over. So I am lining that 45-degree line up straight with the bottom edge of this fabric, and then I want to slide it as far over as I can to make sure that I have as little waste as possible. So I'm just checking for those little selvage edges. There we go. There is our first cut. That's the scariest part. And now we can slide this over again, and we are looking for 3 inches. And so 1, 2, 3, I want to make sure now this line here, the 3-inch line, is straight with the edge. That 45 should go right to that point of our fabric, and this should go straight across the bottom. So those are the things you're checking for every time before you make a cut. And so we're going to make that 3-inch cut. You're going to continue your strip sets. You'll cut all of them, but I'm going to just show you how to do this. So I've gone ahead and made some of these other cuts so that we're all ready to go. So now we're going to lay these out. So here is our first one. And then this one's going to come in just like so. And we'll see this start to take shape, which is so fun. And here is our last piece. Just like that. So you can see how this is going to come together once we sew this together, but let me move this up a little bit because lining these up to sew is honestly one of the trickiest parts of this step. So here are our first 2 strips we're going to sew. We're going to fold this one back. Let me grab some pins here because pins are going to be your friend in this case. And so what we need to do is account for that 1/4 inch seam that we're going to take. And so what I like to do is just stagger my seams a little bit here. And when I fold it back, what you want is for the angle here and the angle here to match up when you fold it back 1/4 inch. And once you have that, I know it's hard to see with the white on white. Let me go ahead and pin this and I'll show you on the brown because I think it'll be clearer for you. You want to pin that in place. But so see here, I've slid it past, and then when I fold it back 1/4 inch, you can see how that white is going to continue at the same angle, and that means I'm going to keep those nice sharp points when I sew my 1/4 inch seam. So you just want to take your time and pin these junctures, otherwise you're going to be super sad when everything is just a little bit off. So again, we want these to line up, fold back. That looks good. Put a pin in it. And same thing here. You can really see here. Here's that blue seam. I'm piecing it with the white, and I just want that angle to continue in the exact same way. And then when I fold it back, it looks like it just lines up with nothing at all. All right, so we've got that pin. And so now that we know that this is all lined up the way that we want it, we can go ahead and take this to the sewing machine and gently sew our 1/4 inch seam. Just be careful not to tug and pull. Let the machine be the guide since we are working with that bias edge. And I'm going to get as close to that pin as I can without sewing over it, just to make sure everything stays right where I want it. Then pull it out of the way and keep going. Okay. All right. Now let's open this up and take a look, see how we did. That looks pretty darn good. I'm very happy with that. So you can see all of those 45-degree angles are matching up nicely. I'm going to wait to press this at the very end because I don't want to risk distorting this, but I'm just going to continue in that exact same way, folding these back and pinning. And by sewing these 5 strips together, that's going to give me 1 star leg, and we're going to make 8 of these for our quilt. So I'm going to finish this up, and I'll meet you back here when I have it all sewn together. All right, so here is our first little star leg unit all sewn together. I think it turned out really nice. Again, just remember when you are pressing this, you're pressing, not ironing. Don't stretch it. A lot of starch is your friend to keep it nice and stiff and easier to work with on those bias edges. And so now that we have our star legs done, you're going to have 8 units that look just like this, and we're going to start putting it together in quadrants. And so here is another one, and we are going to sew these together to start with, but because we're going to need to set in our square in this corner here, we need to mark out our seam to leave room for that, because we do have some set-in seams, which is not hard, you just have to know how to do it. So I like to use this little ruler here, and we are going to measure in 1/4 inch from this edge, and I am just going to make a little mark right there with my chalk pin. There we go, you can see there. And then I'll do the same thing from this side. And so now you can see I have a little X that I've marked on my fabric here, and the center of that X is where I am going to start my seam to go down to this end here. I can go all the way to the edge, but I need to leave that 1/4 inch so that I can set in my corner later. So let's go ahead and take this to the machine, and I'm going to put the needle down right in the middle of that X. Perfect. One other thing I forgot to mention, as we're sewing down, these angles aren't the same as when we were sewing all of our strips together. You just want these to line up exactly. So your seams should nest as you're sewing down, and just be really careful not to stretch. So I always kind of check before I get to the next one to make sure I'm still lined up. And then use that as the opportunity to just readjust and make sure everything is where I want it. Okay. Beautiful. All right, now let's open that up. That looks so nice, and we have that little 1/4 inch seam that is open at the top for us to set in our corner. And so the size that you need from your background is 18.5 inches. So I have gone ahead and cut that. And so let's go ahead now and talk about attaching these corners. So I like to just pick a side, and just like we marked on our other one, we're going to mark out our 1/4 inch from that corner so we can line up the right spot. All right, so 1/4 inch in from both directions. And so that is where my needle's gonna start, right there. And so then when I bring this over here, I'm gonna fold back this piece, and I'm gonna set in this square. All right, so then I'm gonna take a pin and I'm gonna place that right in that little juncture that I marked, and then we are going to line that right up with our 1/4 inch that we saved. And again, we just want to make sure this piece is out of the way when we start stitching. There we go. And then this is just going to line up straight down this side, and we can sew this first seam. So let's bring this in. Again, we're going to put our needle down right where that mark is. So I am going to take a few stitches here and then go ahead and back stitch Just don't go past that mark. Beautiful. All right, now let's see how that's looking. That looks really nice. And so then now I'm going to turn this, I'm going to pull this opposite star leg over. And same idea, we want to make sure the bulk of the rest of this is out of the way because we don't want to catch that by mistake. And the beauty of this side is you can see where those other stitching have started and stopped, so we know it's right there. Here's our little 1/4 inch right there. And so we're just going to start in that same place right at the beginning and sew all the way down this edge. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I backstitched again there to lock that in. And then we are just going to sew carefully down this side. All right, I am actually going to stop here because I'm seeing that this isn't lining up exactly how I want at the end. I've just got a little bit of overlap. And so if you have a piece that's a little bit bigger, if you put it down towards the feed dogs, it will help ease it in. If it's way too big, you probably need to double check and see, you might have done something, you know, had a little boo-boo and cutting error or something. But I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to put a little pin in here to make sure it stays where I want it to get started. And then I'm going to ease this in because again, we don't want to tug and distort our star. I'm just going to make sure that this is staying nice and straight. Everything is lined up, and then we can just zoom on down. And then be sure to backstitch where I stopped before. There we go. All right, so now let's take a look at this. There is our little set-in seam. I think that looks really nice. I'm gonna wait to press this until the very end, just because I don't wanna run any risk of distorting this more than I need to. And so now, once we have one of these done, we can attach another, and then I'll show you how to do this set-in triangle. And then that is really all of the tricks of this quilt, because you'll just repeat these steps that I've shown you to finish it out. So we're going to fold this over, line up our middle here, just like before. And remember, these are those straight edges, so we don't have to worry about that kind of goofy overlap. You just want to make sure those seams nest. So let's go ahead and take this over. You do need to, I almost forgot, you do need to mark your 1/4 inch seam. I'm getting so excited that this is almost done. I would have been frustrated with myself. So let's again measure down because we're going to have to set in a triangle this time. So there's our 1/4 inch that way and this way. And remember, you're starting right in the middle of that X and leaving the rest of that seam open so that we can add our triangle at the end. Now I want to put my needle down right there. Perfect. So we'll take a few stitches forward, go ahead and backstitch to lock that in. And then now as I go, I'm just going to line up each little juncture to make sure my seams are nesting. There's that first one. Okay. And one more little seam to match. And then when you get down to this bottom corner, I just kind of like to manage the bulk. I press one of the seams one way and one the other, just so that I can have as little under the needle as possible. There we go. All right. Look at this, we have half of our star coming together. Isn't this awesome? So now we're gonna set in this triangle here to finish out our star. So let's go ahead and fold this and set it aside. And I have a 23-inch square here that I've cut from our background fabric. And we need to give this a press so that we can cut this in half. So let's go ahead and take it over to the ironing board. Make sure it's nice and straight. I'm gonna go right to that corner there. And then I'm gonna find my middle just by folding this, giving myself a crease there in the center. Perfect. All right, and so now we are going to cut this in half. So I've got that crease right here. I want to make sure that my ruler is straight across this bottom edge and going right to the point. There we go. And so now we will have 2 of the 4 setting triangles that we're going to need for this quilt. The last thing I want to do before we keep going is we need to mark our 1/4 inch, just like we did on our squares. So I'm going to use my little ruler here, and we're going to be marking this 90-degree corner. And we just want to come in from this side and this side. Oops. There we go. Oops, broke my chalk. There we go. And so then we're going to start with our needle right there at the 1/4 inch line. And so let's bring our quilt top back over here. And let's get this all ready to go. And so just like when we added our squares, we're going to kind of fold back this excess out of the way. And we are going to start by placing that little mark that we made so that it lines up exactly with where the stitching started or stitching stopped back there, excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in there. And then you'll see this is going to be quite a bit larger than our piece, and that's what we want. We'll trim it off straight at the end. We just want to have plenty of room. So now, same thing. You guys are going to get so good at these set-in seams. And then the possibilities are just endless. So let's lower that presser foot right on that starting point. Again, a few stitches, back stitch to lock it in there. And then we can just zoom down the side of this star leg. Again, same rules apply. Don't be stretching or tugging anything. Just make sure it's all lined up and then let the machine do the work for you. Perfect. There is our first one. And then now we're going to bring this around the other way. And once you have those marked, you're really just sewing straight seams. I am going to flip this over and sew it from this direction just to make it easier on myself. Keep some of that bulk out of the way. And so if you need to come in and make your mark again, but I can see right there where my stitches stopped before, so I'm just going to use that as my guide and continue down this way. Okay, I took a few stitches there just to anchor it. Now I'll line up and just continue down this side. Okay, there we go. Now we have half of our star complete. Doesn't that look awesome? At this point, if you want to give this a press, this is the time I would do it. And so we will just press this gently, and then we'll use our ruler to square off this edge, the extra piece that we have left over. You're just gonna make the other half in the exact same way. Sew those together, add your last 2 setting triangles on the side, and then your quilt is going to be done. So let's hold this up so you can see how this fits in right there into the quilt behind me. And we get to finally say that we made a Lone Star, and I'm so excited about that. I love this quilt. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I used this great panto called Diagonal Plaid for the quilting, which I really love. And here is this beautiful backing. I love the great kind of natural beach texture that that has. And this finishes off at 62 inches square, so it's a great throw size. But I have to show you this little mini that Courtney surprised me with. I think it is so cute. How fun is this? She used 1¼ inch strips to make it, but everything else is exactly the same. So don't be afraid to play with your strip size. And just experiment and have fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I can't wait to see your versions of the Prairie Twilight quilt, and I'll see you next time on At Home. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching At Home. We're so excited to be almost 1 million quilters strong here at Missouri Star. And so if you haven't already joined our family, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of all of our future tutorials, and we'll see you soon.